Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Ora News broadcast. It's now time for our English edition, Monday through Saturday at 6 p.m. The chairman of the Ad Hoc Commission for Justice Reform, Fatmir Xhafaj, has commented on the final opinion of the Venice Commission. According to him, the opinion confirmed the institutional structure and technical solutions proposed by the high-level experts. He made the following statements today. The final opinion of the Venice Commission has supported the necessary importance and urgency of realizing the justice reform through some radical solutions and interventions, like the establishment of the anti-corruption structures and the evaluation process for judges and prosecutors. So it's naive and has no political benefit to declare that the Venice Commission rejected the project of institutional changes, said Mr. Xhafaj. According to him, the political class is interpreting the Venice recommendations differently, especially the appointment of members of the Judiciary, the Constitutional Court, the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Judicial Council. The chairman of the Ad Hoc Commission expressed that the majority is ready to cooperate with the opposition, leaving political interests behind. He continued, "In fulfilling the recommendations, we are ready to cooperate with the opposition and to include it in the process of creating new justice bodies. The members of these bodies should not be elected based on political interest." Regarding the National Bureau of Investigation, Xhafaj insisted that it was not part of the Venice recommendations. No one pretended that the Bureau would be outside the control of the prosecution, he said. Regarding the recommendations on the mandate of Prosecutor General, Mr. Xhafaj believes it to be a reasonable recommendation and one that the majority accepts. Lastly, he encouraged the opposition to take part in the justice reform. The vote of the opposition in this process is very important, he said, because this is a fundamental and constitutional reform. It is important that we all come together in this process, and I hope that we will, said Xhafaj. The majority and the opposition have both expressed their willingness to cooperate on the justice reform, but they have different interpretations on the opinion of the Venice Commission. While Fatmir Xhafaj claimed that the Venice experts praised the majority's draft, his Vice Director Edward Halimi says that Venice shares the concerns of the opposition about the justice system falling under political control. Halimi says that the issues that were raised in the report should be discussed in political dialogue. The Venice opinion raised the same concerns as the opposition in relation to the control of the justice system, he said. Of course, there are issues that require political dialogue. He added that the opinion of the European experts is against the government's project for a National Bureau of Investigation. He continued, "It is not reasonable for the Bureau of Investigation, of the structure that will investigate the high officials who are the ministers of Rama, to be under the authority of Rama. The Venice Commission clearly states that the Bureau should not be supervised by the government," said Halimi. "We will vote for the justice reform only if it is based on the Venice recommendations. The Venice Commission says that the political dialogue is needed and it is the government's duty to create the conditions for political dialogue." The final opinion was handed to the vice chairman of the commission by the U.S. ambassador during a meeting with a number of the Democratic Party reps. It's reported that Basha shared his concerns about decriminalization, saying that the incriminated MPs are returning to Parliament, referring to the socialist MP Armando Prenga. He also reportedly told the ambassador that the Democrats will not be returning to normal parliamentary life if the amendment to the decriminalization law is not adopted. After the opposition threw eggs and other items at the Prime Minister in the last plenary session, the Socialist MPs have been instructed to keep the peace. In today's meeting of the Socialist Parliamentary Group, the Prime Minister told his MPs to keep calm in the face of any provocation the opposition might be planning for the next session. It's reported that Mr. Rama also told them to make sure they attend the special plenary session on Friday. The EU High Representative for Foreign Policy, Federica Mogherini, will be addressing the Parliament on that day. The Socialist Parliamentary Group meeting was attended for the first time by the Minister of Economy, Milva Ekonomi. The party will be gathering for their National Assembly next week, which will precede the party Congress on March 19th. The Democratic chairman, Basha, is considering the idea of expanding and consolidating the opposition. After a meeting with representatives of 16 allied parties, Basha seemed open to the possibility of cooperation with the New Democratic Spirit led by Bamir Topi and the Red and Black Alliance led by Kreshnik Spahihu. He said today that his party is discussing the possibilities. The alliance of crime is not above an alliance that is expanding and has decriminalization as a priority, he said. Decriminalization is the priority of all Albanians, along with free and honest elections. We are in the process of negotiating with other parties that see themselves in opposition of Edi Rama's regime, said Basha. The Party for Unity and Human Rights, led by Vangel Dule, is now officially part of the opposition after leaving the ruling coalition several months ago. The Albanian government may be softening its stance on refugees. Just a few days after the Prime Minister said that Albania will not open its borders to the immigrants coming from Eastern countries, two other government reps have expressed a more relaxed attitude. The Minister of Defense, Mimi Kodheli, and the Vice Minister of Interior, Eldona Gjebreja, have stressed that Albania's stance is that of the Prime Minister. However, they do not deny the fact that Albania has taken the necessary measures if faced with a wave of new arrivals, even though the options are limited. Minister Kodheli had this to say: "The refugee crisis remains a problem for Europe and the Balkan countries. We are evaluating the situation. I stand by the stance of the Prime Minister, who said that our opportunities are limited. We are evaluating the situation and we will continue to do so. We will clarify our position in the coming days," said Kodheli. On his part, Vice Minister Gjebreja had this to say: "We have taken precautions and we have an emergency action plan. We have not set up any emergency centers, but we will be mobilizing." During an interview for a foreign news agency, the Interior Minister Samir Tahiri announced that the government has prepared an emergency plan, which will be set in motion if needed. At present, there are no plausible signs that the refugees will choose the Albanian route, but if it happens, we are prepared, said Mr. Tahiri. The representative of the EU Economic and Social Committee made the statement today that Albania does not have the capacity or financial ability to receive refugees. Mr. Sabian was in Shkodra today, where he made the following comments: "I think that no one expects the Western Balkan countries to host immigrants from Eastern countries, since your economic situation and budget will not allow you to help them. But the EU expects the Balkan countries to try to prevent immigrants from using these routes," he said. He also spoke about Albania's prospects for entering the EU. "You have to fulfill some political and economic criteria," he said. In terms of political criteria, chapters 23 and 24 of the Progress Report are very important for Albania, especially justice, human rights, and law enforcement. It was decided that the first chapter to be reviewed for Albania would be the chapter on law enforcement, anti-corruption, justice, and everything that has to do with the democratic state. For this reason, I think that if Albania is to make progress toward the EU, it must meet the criteria in these two chapters, said Mr. Sabian. That's the end of our edition for this evening. Thanks for watching, and please join us again tomorrow at 6 p.m. for more translated news in English. Have a great night.